really it depends on the company, and it depends as well, sort of the acquirer. And I'm just trying to be very general because everyone's different. Every acquirer up here is different in the way that they approach their deals. As it relates to that specific case, without going into too much detail, I think it's important to note that a company should be focused on the product, and that's the first and foremost thing, at least in my mind. Building the product, making it very attractive, making it easy to use, making it, at least in my view, social, open, mobile, and sort of focusing on that right now is very important. As it relates to maximizing value, whether you have a very fast revenue growth, whether you have a product with a lot of users and you think there's a way to monetize that in the future, I think focusing on those key elements of your business are really important. But again, not losing your core fundamentals of kind of why you got into it. And that's kind of more taking off my professor hat and trying to be giving more of an entrepreneurial guidance in that sense. You need to focus on why you got into this in the first place. And as Rick said, I think very well put, was the exits will come if you're doing a good job. And as it relates to Radian 6, great company, great entrepreneurs, and that's why we are where we are today with that company.
Mark or Robbie or Sia?
I would say that there are probably really three prices that are out in the world when we're having one of these conversations. There's the price that I've determined that Microsoft is willing to pay. There's the price that you're willing to take, and then there's the agreed price. The three of those may not have any relation to each other at all. And we see, you hear bits and pieces of stories, whether it's rumors about Groupon and what they did or would not take, et cetera, et cetera. It is an art. There is no science to this. You all have numbers in your heads about what you'd be willing to take. Vitaly and I were talking earlier. You have a number. And it can be based upon anything. What your friend got in their last startup, what you think it requires for you to be happy, whatever that might be. From the Microsoft perspective, for most things, we're looking at those same things. We're looking at what did Radian 6 just trade for? What does that mean for your board members? What are they then thinking about the prices in the marketplace? But fundamentally, I'm going to run an analysis that says, what is Microsoft willing to pay for this? And that's primarily a build versus buy kind of thing. What am I willing to pay in and above what it's going to cost me if I wanted to go build that feature, that functionality? And there's some things we realize we can't build. You might not believe that, but there are some things we realize we can't build. And then the price is really ultimately what we agree to. And again, that third element, the agreed price, may not have any relation to what I thought I was going to pay, what you thought you were willing to accept, because there could be other dynamics in the situation which we didn't really talk about, which are there other companies that are interested in buying you? How important do I feel you are to the success of any one bit or piece of Microsoft, or Microsoft in general? All those factors go into it.
I would say we get to the valuation question at the very end. For us, it really starts off at the strategic level. Is the acquisition on strategy? Is it something? Is it a company? Is it an area where we think we can be successful? Is there a sustainable competitive advantage? And so we answer all of these questions, and then we get to the valuation. On the valuation, I can just tell you what we do, and at the risk of stating the obvious, I mean, we do a valuation of the company on a standalone basis. We kind of try to figure out what the revenue synergies are, which is cross-sell and the like, and what the cost synergies are, which is probably less relevant for a startup. And that gets to we discount it at our hurdle rate, which is 15%, and we try to pay as little as possible of that value. So whether that's, let's call it at a minimum 70% of that total enterprise value. And of course, it doesn't always work out that way, but that would be kind of just the plain vanilla model. And everything's a kind of a negotiation from there. But that's kind of how our process works.
So Intuit doesn't just pick 170 million.
No, we have done 3 deals in a row, all at 170 million. I don't know. how
And
that.
it's not the Excel spreadsheet. It actually
It's
works.
no, no. It's yeah. I don't know if the check printer was broken at that point, but we have done. Not 171, 160, literally 170 for 3 different deals. So
Well, the only thing I would add to that is I think that it's very tempting to close a gap between what you want and what the buyer is willing to pay with an earnout. It's very tempting. And having acquired companies with earnouts, and Rick certainly can attest to this, it is extremely difficult to get to the full earnout, and it almost always is the point at which there are disputes between you and the acquirer, and that's when things start to go downhill, and the acquirers don't realize the value that they end up paying, and you end up not getting what you really wanted, and it's just bad. So, not saying that earnouts don't work, but you have to be very, very careful about how it's structured. You have to understand what the company does with earnouts. You have to understand how it's all organized and think through all the factors. But I think most earnouts don't work. I think that's true.
The only thing I might add to that, every company has its own sort of understanding. The CEO understands what they think the value may be, for example. But the acquirer may have a different view. And so, they go through that process. And as, you guys talked about here already, it depends sort of what you come out at, how you value it, what the model looks like. But there may be certain things that the acquirer looks at that, the entrepreneur may not see or may not sort of have the same mindset on. And so, if there are 4 core elements to your business, I might only look at 2 of them because those are the 2 things that I'm excited about. That's different than what you may think your own standalone value may be. And so you just have to think about, who is the person who's looking at my business and sort of what are they focused on, and be very clear about that so that you don't have a disconnect. Be very clear about sort of, what are they trying to achieve with this acquisition, understand the strategy to the extent you can, and I think it makes the process a little bit easier.
Yeah, good. All right, 2 more questions and we'll open it up. Let's talk on or dissect why deals fail or unravel. Do you guys see patterns of reasons why things fall through, pitfalls to avoid? Give a few nuggets or tips to the folks in the audience.
Sure. So starting on this, I think there are many, many reasons why deals fail. A good one would be IP isn't clean. You said it best about get your IP house in order. Very important. Could be you try to get very cheap contractors in the beginning as well from like an HR perspective. Make sure that your house is in order there as well. Make sure the people who are working for you are like the people you'd want to introduce to your parents and the people that you'd want to sort of be very focused on, and you could end up spending a lot of time with them. So make sure that those are the people that are going to come on board. They're going to work as hard as you work, and they're going to be people that could be with you through an exit. If they're not those people, you want to at least have the right legal agreements in place so that if they need to depart, they can depart in a clean fashion. That's something that could destroy a transaction. Depends on sort of the magnitude of the situation. I would recommend running background checks on people you hire. That's my personal opinion. You don't want to get and learn certain things about people in the future that you didn't know about them in the past. Other things I think important to note would be related to IP, but sort of more along the same lines of who are the competitors in the space, right? What are they doing? What's similar? What's different? What's my core value proposition? And how does that make me very unique? Acquirers want a unique asset, and that unique asset obviously becomes more valuable depending on the level of uniqueness. But those are my sort of 3 things I guess I'd focus on.
Good.
Did you mean deals when they're happening or after they close?
Let's open up to both. Yeah.
So I actually think that not enough deals fail before they close, because it's very tempting when you've signed that no shop and you've got that dollar amount in your head to just power through. But I think as you work with the company with an integration plan and things don't look quite right and you don't really believe in it and the acquirer doesn't believe in it, people don't walk away. And that's kind of tragic, because when you close a deal like that, it's going to fail. It's bound to fail in a short period of time. and then nobody's happy, maybe except for the VCs. But the acquirer becomes really pissed off, and you burn bridges with those people. So that's one thing I just want to throw out there. But I think most deals fail after they close because there isn't a good buttoned up integration plan. And part of that plan is all the logistics of, bringing the people on board, et cetera. What are you going to be doing? How much you get paid? Great. That stuff is pretty easy. It's the big picture, vision, strategic objectives. What are you trying to accomplish? What are you going to be responsible for? What are your success metrics? All those things are extremely important. And if the buyer and the seller are not aligned, it's really difficult to make any kind of an acquisition integration work.
Yeah, I'd agree. I don't have much to add to that. There's a pet peeve of mine, and you won't believe me about this, but the biggest thing for me is when people lie. You would think that that's a pretty obvious thing, but people lie all the time, and that's the one, whether it's about your IP or the use of open source in your product. None of those, from the Microsoft perspective at least, are absolute deal killers. The notion is you need to tell me about them, especially when I ask you about them. So I just encourage people to be actually honest in these kind of, and I know it's tough. There's a fine line between dissembling and lying, and I get that. I'm not naive in that regard, but you need to be very careful as well. And I think Rick made a very good point about going through that failing process on the target side, and the energy and the effort that's put in. You need to be very careful about that. And so I would just offer up that be honest with people, be upfront with people, and you can decide whether that's the right fit for you or not.
So I don't know if I have anything that new to add. I would agree. I think legal exposure is one reason where I think things fall apart, either IP related or we had one potential deal where the founder was involved in litigation with the company, the founder, ex-CEO, and so that's never anything you really want to deal with. But so legal exposure. The second thing I would say is just in the product or technical due diligence, things are not as great as you seem once you look under the hood. And the last one I would say is just valuation expectations, right? So, for example, anyone who has anything to do with kind of savings or coupons or daily deals right now thinks they deserve a 60 revenue multiple, and so that gets a little bit frothy. I would say post closing, I would agree with Robbie. I think on the integration stuff, it's really not the kind of hardwire issues like get everybody on email and make sure everyone has a business card. It's really the softer cultural issues. I think what we've seen is it is a major culture shock to go from being a startup to being part of, in our case, an 8,000 person company, and in his case, I don't even know how big, 100,000 person company? 85, okay, sorry. And you cannot underestimate what a big change that is. And so managing through those issues in a very kind of targeted, focused way, I think is absolutely critical. And what we try to do on integration, we have our whole integration team, or some companies hire kind of McKinsey or BCG to kind of run it for them, is we try not to do too much. So we sit down with the GM and we say, well, what are actually the three things you want to accomplish? And we just kind of push to those three things as opposed to trying to do everything.
You mind if I just add a couple other things that maybe just thinking pre-deal, because you guys touched a little bit on post-deal as well, but time is very important. Something I forgot to mention. So time kills deals. If you drag things out too long, people lose interest. Could be on your side, could be on our side. You just don't know. And so there's usually a window with most transactions, at least in my experience. And so sort of making sure that you're focused on the right issues. Negotiations are tough. Certain things are more important to some people than to other people, but you need to know what's important to you and then bring those issues and sort of have a position and, as said before, negotiate off of them if necessary, but otherwise have a good footing. The other thing I would say that's maybe a little bit different if I were to put myself in the sort of startup entrepreneur type shoes is make sure that the acquirer has sort of the right decision makers and sponsors in the deal. Make sure that you're meeting with the right people in the company. So,